Video game music. We all love it. For some it's the nostalgia, others the easygoing background vibes, similar to the purpose lo-fi serves. If you want to listen to some, it's as simple as a YouTube search, and there you go, you're listening to some video game music. If you just want some background noise, then that's certainly good enough, but if you're here, you're probably a little bit more of a VGM enjoyer than the average person. In this video, I'll be showing different formats of video game music, different ways you can listen to them, and issues with some of the most common. Before I talk about how you can listen to video game music, I need to break down the different types. I'll split everything into 3 broad categories: streamed, chiptune, and sequenced. Without a doubt, streamed is the most common type. It refers to audio stored and played back as a pre-rendered audio stream, whether from a YouTube video or something like a local MP3 file. It's good because these formats are widely supported and can hold any and all audio content as accurately or inaccurately as you want, but their biggest drawback is their size. Streamed files are relatively much larger than other formats, and that can start to add up. They're also less customizable compared to other formats, since streamed audio is a fixed capture of the full sound. This type can be broken down much further. The next distinction I'll make is between lossy and lossless. MP3s and audio from YouTube are lossy, meaning there's a loss of quality, but in exchange you get a much smaller file size. The actual quality loss isn't something worth worrying about too much. Most people can't hear a difference at all. But when using YouTube, the quality of the audio can be a mixed bag. It depends on what format the user uploaded the video as, and the quality of the source audio they used. At the time of this video, YouTube encodes audio to Opus, which is a really efficient lossy format that retains the full audible frequency spectrum, unlike AAC, the previous codec they used. That format would cut out some of the higher frequencies that some people can still hear, and is considered to be lower quality in general. Then for lossless, which is audio with no quality loss, you mostly have the FLAC format. It saves space with file size compression, similar to zipping a file, but plays back audio exactly the same as if it were a raw, uncompressed digital audio format. It's a very fast and efficient format, so it's been a popular choice for music enthusiasts for decades. If you're only interested in casual listening, you don't need to store and listen to your music in FLAC. You can get by using a lossy codec just fine. Some users still prefer to keep their music in FLAC for archival, or to encode them to different formats of their liking for use on other devices, since re-encoding lossy audio multiple times over can cause audible quality degradation. Those are some of the more common streamed formats. MP3s and FLACs will play on just about anything, and YouTube is widely accessible. But there's another kind of streamed format you can use to play game music, the source game files. For games that store their music as streamed audio, it's possible to listen to them straight from the files ripped right out of the game. There's been a large effort over the past decade or so developing a library to make this possible, VGM Stream. It supports just about any streamed audio file from any game you can imagine, and some music players can utilize VGM Stream to play them directly. The benefit of playing music this way is you're saving space by not re-encoding lossy audio files to a lossless format, and you're saving quality by not instead encoding them to another lossy format again, though some game files are already lossless anyways. Another pro is you can do this for any applicable game just by extracting the files yourself. The drawbacks to this approach are compatibility and convenience. VGM Stream doesn't have as much widespread support as MP3 or FLAC. Tagging also usually isn't as thorough as MP3s or FLACs you may find elsewhere, with files often left having generic names. This is an issue because if you're listening to music, you usually want to know the track title, and finding a song without tags or a memorable file name can be difficult in a music library. That about covers streamed audio. Next type is chiptune. This word is often used in other ways, but I'll be using it to mean music that uses a chip to generate sounds, like various FM or PSG chips. This type is commonly seen in older consoles, since they didn't have the technology to practically utilize full streamed music. For example, let's look at the NSF format. NSF files and all of its variants are effectively NES games, or ROMs, stripped of anything not required for playing its music, with some added data. They can be played by what are also like stripped down emulators, with even some full NES emulators supporting them, but you can also play them on real NES hardware with a flash card. Storing music in formats like this is surprisingly efficient. My collection of over 2,000 NSF files is under 50 megabytes, which is almost the size of just one FLAC song, and that's with most NSF files holding an entire game's soundtrack. They're also not very resource heavy to play, so a lot of low-end devices can easily handle them. Support for playing formats like these are mixed. Most devices will have some application that can play them, but your favorite music player might not be able to. These types of formats also are usually tagged very well, with proper track titles, numbering, and so on. There's other formats that work like that, but here's one that works a little differently, the VGM format. These files are recordings of instructions sent to the sound chip, rather than being the code sending the instructions. This matters because it's a lot easier to log instructions to a VGM file. In fact, almost anyone can do it. On the other hand, ripping to formats like NSF often requires deep knowledge of the system's assembly language and architecture. Most VGM players will still be emulating the sound chips, but you can also play VGM files with their original hardware. What makes this format notable is its support for many systems, ranging from the NES to the Sega Genesis and even obscure arcade games. It has similar pros and cons like I mentioned just before, but since the format is still being updated with new features and support for more systems, not all VGM players will support every single VGM file. Something cool that applies to most formats in this category is their customization. Some players will allow you to change the volume of each channel or instrument, something you couldn't do with a normal streamed audio file. There can also be settings that change the sound in other ways, like with the SPC format for SNES music, you can change the sample interpolation to get a brighter or otherwise different sound. Overall, these formats are a fun novelty on top of being practical in many ways. Lastly, I'll categorize these next formats as sequenced, even if that might not be the most accurate term for everything included. These formats usually work like MIDI and sound font, if you're already familiar with those. You have data containing the musical notes, along with the individual sound samples for the note data to play. So you might have an audio sample of a piano note, and the note data will tell it when to play that sample back, and at what pitch. This technology provides a great balance between realism and small file sizes. This is where compatibility and exact formats start to vary greatly between systems. Some are widely supported and have custom formats made by the community, like PSF and USF for the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 respectively. But some are either under-researched or are very complicated and can't be played back as easily, like with sequenced music from the GameCube. Sequenced formats generally share similar pros and cons with chiptune formats, having small file sizes, mixed compatibility, and extra customization, although tagging is usually not as complete or present as most chiptune formats. There's a lot more that could be said about all of these categories and formats, but as far as just listening to game music goes, I think it's enough to get started. Next, let's talk about how you can actually listen to video game music. By far the most common way is via YouTube. Simply search for the game music you want to listen to, or throw on one of those 2-hour mixes, and there you go. If that's all you want to do, then you're done. You can even make playlists out of the individual songs you like, but this is where the problems start. If you already do this, you may be familiar with this message. YouTube videos of songs go down like wildfire, leaving you with tracks disappearing from your playlists, and you potentially not even knowing what's gone. That's a benefit of storing and listening to music locally, via the local formats I described before. You can have absolute certainty that YouTube isn't going to reach into your computer and steal your music from you. Well, how do you get video game music locally? You can buy a lot of newer game soundtracks on Bandcamp or Steam, sometimes even on CD. It's a great way to build a collection while supporting the artists. A fair amount of older game soundtracks were released on CD too, and can be found on the secondhand market, though usually at a bit of a premium. For anything else, especially with the more unique formats, I won't spell it out directly just to be safe, but they're not hard to find. The most basic of searches will lead you where you need to go. Now that you know how to get some video game music locally, I'll show you a few ways you can play them back. For format compatibility, nothing beats Foobar 2000 on Windows. This is a general-purpose music player that stood the test of time, but what makes it special is its extensive catalog of community-developed components that can play back almost anything you can imagine. The Windows version can be set up on Mac and Linux too, but you gotta jump through some hoops. Any other native version of Foobar 2000 is functionally useless for unique game music formats, since they don't support the components we need. Out of box, Foobar 2000 may seem intimidating, plain, and old, but you can easily install a theme that brings it to life. Here's a few components I recommend to get started. VGM stream for a large variety of streamed game music, 2SF and NCSF decoder for Nintendo DS music, GSF decoder for GBA, Game Emu Player or ZXTune for a large variety of chiptune, and Lazy USF for Nintendo 64 music. You might need more depending on what you want to listen to, but components are easy to find when you need them. The only other general music player for Windows I'll mention is MusicBee, and that's because a lot of people seem to use it. It's okay, similar to Foobar 2000, and has add-on support, although their catalog isn't nearly as extensive. I used it for a while, but I always had issues with stability. Considering it's also only on Windows and closed source, it's hard to recommend it to anyone who isn't already heavily invested into it. It is slightly easier to use, but you'd benefit much more from just learning how to use Foobar 2000, not that it's hard to in the first place. For Android, there are a few options, but there's one clear winner, Chiptune. It has support for just about anything you could possibly want to play built right in, whether streamed, chiptune, or sequenced. The GUI isn't the best as far as general music players go, but it's functional and easy to use. Chiptune also has builds for Windows, Mac, Linux, and a few other platforms, and they all seemingly share the same compatibility. Again, the desktop builds aren't the prettiest, but it's something to play back game music. Outside of general-purpose multi-format music players, there's also programs made to play or export specific formats, usually with more settings and attention to detail. A good example is NSF Play. It's a Windows program and Winamp plugin dedicated to playing back the NSF format as accurately as possible, and it really excels at that. Another interesting one is AGB Play. It's a really intricate GBA music player that stands out by playing back its music really clean, removing that thick layer of noise we all know the GBA's music for. All of the programs I mentioned are for PCs and Android, but there's a lot of other devices you can get some game music formats playing on, like an iPod Classic. If you install Rockbox on it, you can play a nice variety of chiptune music. Or if you have a Nintendo DS with a flash card, you can also listen to a handful of chiptune formats with Moonshell. Of course, it's not the best quality coming out of a DS, but it's still pretty cool. There's lots of novel ways you can listen to your favorite game music formats if you look around. And that about covers it for this video. This isn't supposed to be absolutely extensive, and I know there's going to be some people who already knew most or all of this, but I hope I could get some new people interested in the VGM community. I feel like a lot of people simply don't know much of this is even a thing. And if you still prefer just booting up YouTube for your video game music needs, don't let any elitists say you need to do otherwise.